We've got some incoming Battletech Q&A here, working my way through some mailbag. Fritz, what kind of terrain, what kind of hex maps do you play on? That's what we're going to explore in this Battletech vlog. Now, as a narrative type game, we're trying to immerse ourselves in this thing called Battletech. We're trying to have an interesting collection of mechs and missions to really, in that moment, whether you're a mech commander or a mech warrior, put yourself into the game. From that perspective, most of the games that I play are on a traditional wargaming table. We've got 3D terrain, everything is WYSIWYG, and for the most part, it is densely packed. If you're going to kind of go 3D terrain, full wargaming systems, the more terrain, the better. So from that perspective, most of the tables that I play on are city fight, city tech. We lay out the parks and the monuments and the buildings and the spaceport and just absolutely everything, immersing ourselves in that type of environment. Outside of that, sometimes some woods and some forests or some ruins, getting that immersion on the tabletop. Now, the great thing about Battletech is you can do that. You can do hex maps. You can do a hybrid of the two of them. Now, the advantage of hex maps, of course, are portability, size, variety, and the fact that you don't have to do any calculations and you know range and you know facing. It makes things very straightforward and important for Battletech. If you're going to play on a more traditional wargaming table, you have to be ready for those moments where, are you in the firing arc or outside? Is it in range or is it outside of range? As a general house rule, if it's close enough, I give it to my opponent. If it's like, well, it could be an arc, it might not, you know what? Take the shot. Could be in range, could not, take the shot. In terms of movement, measuring, well, am I close enough for physical attacks? You know what? Go for it. You have to be willing to have that, embrace that immersion and embrace that possibility. Whereas a hex map, it's 100% no, you are not in range or you don't have firing arc. Now, I'm not putting down hex maps. I've got a massive collection. The advantage here is space. Sometimes if we're playing at the club where we don't have a lot of space, or if it's dedicated to Warhammer 40K and they need the tables, we can play on the hex map. You can have a nice sized game. 1 hex map, 2 hex maps, multiple hex maps, themed hex maps. The advantage, of course, also portability. When we play that type of Battletech experience, often we will draw up our lances ahead of time and under the table just mix up the hex maps and randomly draw one, or pull out the stack, roll a d20 and count down. So you never really know quite what you're going to get. But there is a midway between the two. And I have one of the older Battletech Game of Armored Combat box sets where they committed heresy, but I get it, the unseen, re-seen, now seen. They redid the Warhammer, the classic Warhammer on the front. That box, I have an interesting mix of hex maps and then on modeled up poker chips, because that's what I had. I based the poker chips with little forests and kind of rubble and terrain, and I put those on the hex map. So the idea, if there's a forest, I lay out the poker chips, and they're modeled up. You wouldn't even really know they're poker chips. They're just a base. So you could almost use any type of base. You could even cut out cardboard hex bases and model those. But I put those on there, and then as a mech moves into that space, you just kind of take the terrain piece off, and the mech is there. So you get this interesting hybrid of 3D pop, which looks fantastic, but at the same time, full accountability in terms of range and facing and the weapon profiles and things. And it fits nicely in a little box, in that box, with the hex maps, with everything ready to go. So you can kind of go both ways based on the Battletech experience. Which one is better? Which bear is best? The experience in that moment, what you're feeling, right? Traditional wargaming table, hex map, something in between. Absolutely no right or wrong way to experience and play Battletech.